But first, from a very tight race in Florida's 9th congressional district, which has been in blue hands since 2012. It's races like this that are going to flip the power in Congress come next Tuesday. Congressional candidate Scotty Moore is with us. Scotty, good morning to you. Great to have you on.
Fantastic to be on. Thank you so much for the opportunity. We are going to flip this seat from blue to red.
Yeah, take us through what's going on. Darren Soto is looking to, I think he's running for a 4th term down there in this district. There was some redistricting. I know you've got the endorsements of Ted Cruz, Mark Meadows, but why is this happening in a district that's been blue for a long time?
Yeah, we also have the endorsement of Senator Rick Scott as well. And the reason why it's flipping is because, first of all, Darren Soto votes 100% of the time with Nancy Pelosi. It's important that people understand that. He's absolutely complicit for what we are experiencing all across America. Not only that, but some have called him no-show Soto because he's not showing up. And there's this complacency of people in power, especially on the radical left, because they get their money from the party, from the dark money that keeps pouring in. I've actually outraised a sitting member of the House of Representatives in individual contributions. The only reason why he's ahead is because he's getting all this PAC money and everything. And so the people of Central Florida have had enough. And that's the reason why we are going to flip this seat from blue to red, because the economy is out of control. Inflation is out of control. Gas prices are hurting everybody, and it's driving prices all the way through the roof. And by the way, the power of the dollar and our retirements are heading the wrong direction. That's why.
Yeah, Scotty, you talked about the economy. That seems to be on the minds of every American, and even those in Florida. Talk to us a little bit about what people are saying there when it comes to immigration, because I know obviously we saw what Ron DeSantis did with the migrants, brought them up to Massachusetts. What are people saying about that?
Well, listen, immigration is a really important topic that we're talking about, but there's a difference between immigration and the invasion that we have at the southern border and the consequences therein of what's happening. Any good leader must protect his or her people, and that's not what is happening here. We are not having a strong, protected America. And it's not just about the immigration, although that's very, very important. What about the fentanyl that's coming across? What about the human trafficking? What about the national security risks? I mean, this is a significant national security issue on so many levels. And then you have people pouring into cities on the border right there, and even into Florida here, that are already overwhelming and really difficult. People are needing jobs, housing crisis. There's so many different issues. And then you see what happened at Martha's Vineyard. They talk about saying they're a sanctuary state and sanctuary city and how they receive people, but they could not get these immigrants out of their city fast enough.
All right, Scotty, I want to welcome in the rest of our team, former New York Congresswoman Nan Hayworth and former Speaker of the Oklahoma House of Representatives, T.W. Shannon, with us as well. You were joined by Scotty Moore, running in the 9th Congressional District down there in Florida, a district that's been in blue hands for a decade, could turn red next Tuesday. Nan, can you talk about the coattail factor? Basically, you know, Ron DeSantis got a 12-point lead in the state of Florida right now. Marco Rubio, this race was a battleground race 2 months ago. Marco Rubio's got an 8-point lead this morning. Looks like it's not even going to be close. How does that benefit candidates like Scotty Moore?
Well, it tells us a lot about the popularity of the policies that Ron DeSantis has so boldly championed in the state of Florida, and their enormous success. They're so successful that now Joe Biden wants to hang out in Florida. Right? It's true.
We all do.
Yeah, but there's a coattail effect when the top of the ticket is successful. There's a coattail effect because voters are migrating toward what works. And that's what's going to help Scotty Moore, aside from his obviously compelling personality and presentation. And unlike Barack Obama, very interesting, he really, you know, when he was campaigning for in off-year elections, he didn't help them. But in this year, Ron DeSantis' success is going to propel all those GOP candidates forward.
Yeah, TW, I think Nan hit the nail on the head when she said policies, right? It's all about policies. Think about how many people moved to Florida during COVID. Think about, and now, you know, we could see this seat turn red. I would say 2 months ago, we kept saying, or people were saying, we're going to see a red wave, right? And then gas prices started to drop, and then people were getting a little nervous. Maybe it's not going to be a red wave. What do you see happening? Because you look at polls, one poll will tell you one thing, another poll will tell you something else.
Yeah, let's be clear about what this election is. This is a referendum on Joe Biden and the liberal policies that have failed America. That's what this election is about. And I bring that up because in states like Oklahoma, where we've got a governor, a Republican governor who came in very popular, he's now underwater. He's been plagued with scandals. And in fact, the RGA has spent $1 million in Oklahoma to try to rescue the Republican governor. And it's all because of the scandals that have happened in the state. So having a top of the ticket, that helps. But it's not everything, because everyone else on the ballot that's running statewide is up by double digits. And so my point is this election is going to be about a referendum on the failed policies, the crime crisis, the border crisis, the inflation crisis, you name it. Americans are suffering right now, and there's nobody to blame in Washington, D.C., but the Democrats, no matter how they try to spin it.
Scotty, I love having candidates like you on because there's been a trend. Donald Trump started this in 2016. It's candidates that haven't held political office before, but have a successful track record outside of the private sector. So I think that turns off a lot of Democrats because we know they love swamp creatures. They like people like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton. Joe Biden got elected to the Senate in 1972. That's how Richard Nixon was president when Joe Biden first got elected to the Senate. You've never held elected office before. Is that helping you in this race?
Yeah, absolutely is. I mean, listen, the swamp is real, and what we want to do is get rid of that and get it back to we the people, everyday American citizens who want to be a part of helping change our country. And listen, I've got a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and leaving a legacy for our kids, grandkids, and even future grandkids matter. And another thing I think that's helping me is I lived in Brazil. My wife's Brazilian. We've been married for 19 years.
Right.
16 years ago, she became a U.S. citizen, and we did it legally, by the way. And so a lot of times people aren't expecting the white guy with the red beard to break out in Portuguese, but eu aprendi a falar português nas ruas do Brasil. E eu também hablo espanhol. And so they're not expecting the white guy to speak Portuguese and Spanish.
That's good. What did you say?
What did you say?
Well, I said I learned Portuguese on the streets of Brazil, and I also speak Spanish. And so it's just important that people understand that I want to connect with everyday American citizens. We're working really hard. And so I've served the communities I've lived in for over 20 years. We worked in the nonprofit sector, teaching, training, equipping, and that's what we're going to keep doing here. We're going to hold our government accountable, and we're going to make the decisions to help leave a legacy for our kids, grandkids, and future grandkids.
Yeah, and you've got a compelling story, and that was when the founders drew up the Constitution, that was what they wanted. They wanted people like T.W. Shannon, like Nan Hayworth. They wanted them to come from the private sector, serve their country, and then go back to the private sector, not get elected in 1972 and never leave.
That's right.
But that's
why I'm for term limits, by the way, because I think it was never meant to be a career like Joe Biden's been, and Speaker Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and even Mitch McConnell and others. It's on both sides.
Yeah. Nan, I want to talk just a little bit about polling. 7 days from the midterms. I'm going to give you two polls that I think are actually interesting. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution giving Herschel Walker it's a little under 1 point, but basically a 1 point lead over Raphael Warnock. So the reporting from the Walker camp today is that, well, they might try to get that 50% so they don't have to go to a December 6th runoff, another runoff in the state of Georgia, which nobody wants to see. The other big one out yesterday, Penn State with some polling. I love the polls that come out of the individual states versus, you notice the New York Times polls yesterday? The Democrats are coincidentally winning in every single key race. New York Times, they've got John Fetterman, they've got Raphael Warnock, they've got Mark Kelly. Every Democrat is winning. This Penn State poll has Dr. Oz up by 3 percentage points. This comes after the debate, of course, that debacle of a debate last week. Nan, your reaction to that?
It's the world of political polling, of course, is receiving scrutiny and has been. But let's face it, most polling has been off in favor of Democrats over and over again over the past few years. And so the most accurate pollsters are probably folks like Robert Cahaley at Trafalgar, Rich Barris with big data polling. They're using novel techniques that actually will get at the submerged, what Cahaley calls the submerged Republican vote. So it's interesting indeed that other polls, and I'm sure the AJC is not exactly a right-wing publication, so it must pain them to find that Herschel Walker is ahead. But it is key in that state of Georgia for every vote for Walker to get out there to avoid that runoff. And, you know, in marginal conditions like this, there's a Libertarian candidate running in Georgia taking 2 to 3% of the vote, probably fairly equally from both sides. That's the way they tend to run. But it'd be great to see Walker make it over. And I think Dr. Oz is going to be the candidate. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette just endorsed him.
Yeah, that's the biggest paper in all of Pennsylvania, by the way.
Yeah, TW, I was actually surprised to see that poll that Dr. Oz was only up 3% after the debate last week. I thought the number would be higher, but we never know with these polls. I want you to quickly listen to the soundbite. John Fetterman recently gave an interview. Take a listen.
President Biden has had a number of bills that you say you have supported. Have Democrats spent too much creating some record high inflation?
Those were spent to actually support working families all across Pennsylvania and all across America. Trillions seem to be a problem when it's going to support working people.
All right, TW, President Biden also thought that Fetterman did a great job on his debate last week. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, here's the challenge that Democrats have is, listen, you can't spend the American people. They know what they're spending at the pump. They know what they're spending when they go to the grocery store, and they know what their 401k accounts look like under the Joe Biden regime. And so as much as Fetterman, the Democrats, as much as they'd like to spin that things are okay and that these trillions of dollars don't matter, they do matter. At the end of the day, we've overspent. We've borrowed money from China to support programs and to try to buy votes, and ultimately, it has driven an out of control inflation, the highest we've seen in 40 years, and voters know it. And so, not only are the Democrats not offering, accountability for their actions, they're not offering any solutions either. When you're running as the party that's been in charge, you should be able to tout your record, how you've accomplished things that you set out to accomplish. They don't have one.
And I'm seeing it with the polling. Polling used to be designed to reflect where voters are. Now they're all about affecting where Democrats want voters to be on Election Day. Big change.
It's really good.
Scotty Moore, good luck to you, my friend. Next Tuesday, a big one for you. Come back and see us first thing Wednesday morning if you win or lose. But we're wishing you the best of luck.
I appreciate it. Just remember, it's Scotty Moore, Scotty with the wine. You can check out more information at ScottyMooreForCongress.com.
All right.
Boom.
Thanks, Scotty.
I like that.
I like that. Nan, TW will pick this back up top of the hour. Alex, over to you.